I'm Ved. I'm one of the co-founders of XRP Cafe. I run infrastructure on the XRP Ledger, like a DNL node, as well as some other activities, like on the EVM sidechain validates for Cafe. And I developed also tools for the XRPL, like Jitterbot, and of course, with XRP Cafe. Yeah, today's session is very a sensitive topic sometimes in the community, because I think it's most often got wrong. It's called the best incentive is no incentive. It is literally the philosophy of the XRP Ledger, how it's built. It's probably one of the very few, or probably the only blockchain without incentive rewards on the blockchain. And those decisions were made back in 2012 when the creators of the XRPL were building the technology out. So I think it's very crucial to understand why this came together, what is the issue of incentives, and why do we have this philosophy on the XRPL. So I'm going to go with my contents here. We're going to look at the system participants. We're going to clear some terminology. What do I mean with system participants? We're going to look at some established incentive programs like proof of work, proof of stake, and we're going to look what are problems with incentives and how can we exploit natural incentives. And we're going to look if we can find a conclusion. System participants. So with natural stakeholders, we just define stakeholders, who they are and what they are doing in the ecosystem. Every ecosystem system has stakeholders. We differentiate between natural stakeholders and forced stakeholders. Natural stakeholders, they have a problem that the system is solving for them. Whatever that is a problem that is solving for them. Either they want to have a business use case, or it is store value, or anything else. Low friction, they want low friction. Be your own bank is literally the thesis that they go by. Forced stakeholders, on the other hand, they are here because the system requires them to be there. Think of miners, stakers, and so on. They extract value, and they represent friction, usually, for the natural stakeholders. So agreement is necessary. We're going to define some very important thesis and key findings here, which is basically there's a mechanism needed to agree on the order of transactions. That is literally the core of why you need usually incentives. You need these participants to come and agree. And all the nodes, they are public, they enforce all the rules, they know the state of the ledger, and this is what they know. And they know what transactions are valid, they can verify it, all of this. We're going to start with proof of work. This is the first incentive mechanism by Satoshi Nakamoto that Bitcoin is using. And it goes by basically you have two users, two opposite size actors, which is miners, the forced stakeholders, and the users. And you can see that the miners, they are here because they extract value. Okay, they get the rewards for mining. It's costly, they need that. The value must come from the users because all this Bitcoin daily, millions of dollars, they get sold to the market, and the users, you guys, have to buy that up because that's how they finance basically the expensive mining. The incentives, they tax the users because again, they have to buy that supply. And double spend attack is possible, of course. Let's think of 51% attacks and so on. It's probably the best way to distribute a token. It's very hard to think of something else. So Bitcoin has definitely not the problem with how to distribute a token. That is, I think there's probably no better way. And very important, the security depends on the token value. If Bitcoin doesn't have the token value it has currently, it wouldn't be secure because all these mining rewards that are being sold to the users, they go back into hashing power and to raise the difficulty. So with a low token value, you have low difficulty, low hashing, and basically it's more susceptible for attacks, like 51% attacks. So it needs high token value, essentially. Yeah, dictator of the moment. We don't have this on the XRP Ledger. We don't have a dictator of the moment. But miners in proof of work, they do. When they find a block, they usually have constructed the transaction, they ordered the transaction, and it's very competitive. It's a race to the bottom because whoever gets that block is getting the rewards. And miners want less miners. So if I'm a miner, I don't want you to mine. I want to be the only participant, okay? Because this is how I maximize my reward. I'm going to be the only one. Anyone else is just increasing my cost, increasing difficulty. I don't want them. And they can vote against the system, basically, and incentives. So think of the block size. Increasing the block size might lower the demand for the current block size, and transactions will not have to pay higher fees. That's, again, against my incentive. I don't want low friction. I don't want people having low transaction fees, because that is against my incentive, because I'm profiting from it. And miner select, as I said, the transactions, so basically miner extracted value. That's something that they have, again, to do. Why do they have to do? Because it's competitive. I need to do any trick that is possible to extract money. Because if someone else does it, they're gonna be able to extract more money by more mining equipment, raise difficulty against me, and drive me out of business. Proof of stake, small improvements, really, but it's not solving the problem. Same old, same old. It's just a change in a lottery, basically, and it's just proportional to the stake. The only thing that they're solving is that the expensive mining is gone, but anything else is still there. It literally inherits the same incentive mechanism as Bitcoin without to justify the structural problems, because you have mining you need to offset with rewards. You don't have this in proof of stake, but they still get the same reward scheme. So it's even more skewed towards the validators. Double spend attack is again possible because there's a dictator of the moment. Security depends again on token value. There's been like studies with A16Z where they found that still with Ethereum, for example, there's much more value outside of Ethereum than on Ethereum, but it still kind of seems to work, of course. There are no attacks, even though there's less stake value than overall value on the chain. So it seems to work. Slashing, yeah, this is something that they try to combat basically with slashing, is to punish people who are misbehaving, okay? And we're gonna see that these mechanisms are very interesting to see, the reward and punishment, okay? You see the reward and punishment here already. It's also very competitive. You have stakers, they want less other stakers, because the more proportional stake I have, the higher chance I have to win a block and get the rewards. And yeah, stakers are also being able to select the transactions, think of dictator of the moment. They also act against the user. So you see already the two sides here, the users and the operators, they're not working together because of the incentives. Yeah, what are the problems with incentives? We talk about what is the problem with incentives. So the assumption is that with incentives we can get human behavior that we otherwise couldn't get, like people to participate, is what people say. But the thing is, we have seen with proof of stake, incentives are no longer justified by the pragmatic balance of the costs, because with staking you don't have mining, still they exist, so what are we really incentivizing here? The assumption is that people are primarily reliable if they are greedy. Like if someone is really greedy, they are primarily reliable. That is, we're going to prove that it's wrong. Catering to greed neglects other and undermines useful behaviors that we have with blockchain and society and governance that we're going to see. Think of examples later on. And it introduces, of course, friction to the stakeholders that they would try to solve their problem in a low cost and cheap manner. Yeah, incentives to good behaviors. So can we incentivize people to behave good? Like if we give them incentive, are they then particularly good in their behavior, like beneficial for the ecosystem? Research suggests that adding monetary incentives system does not really necessarily bring these behaviors that we want to see. Monetary punishment is also disincentivizes people to participate because they are afraid of the punishment, essentially. And on the other hand, desired behaviors are often not at all observed when you introduce monetary incentives. So I have a couple of examples here. We're going to look at good behavior, bad behavior, and some of the research that was done. We're going to look at reward and punishment, and also systems with no incentive. So there were like studies in the daycare in Israel where they find people, parents, who were late to pick up their children. 30 minutes, then they get a fine. And they did this for a while, and people still showed up late for picking up their kids. And even if the fine was removed, they were particularly still late. So it basically, it had no effect, literally it had no effect. And if we look at the school, for example, in Colombia, they did a research there as well from the World Bank, and they gave people money to get their children to school, send their children to school. And we have seen, like in the beginning, 3% more people were sending their children to school, and after a while, only 1%. So the effect of incentives were basically going slowly down. And had actually the opposite effect. The people who were getting not getting incentives, they felt punished. Like, I'm not getting incentives, someone else is getting incentives, I'm not gonna go send my kids to school. So we see already the issues that come across here. On the other hand, we see behavior that only possible with no incentives. Think of the blood donors supply in UK and the United States. In the 90s, they did an experiment. They looked at the quality of blood. In the United States, you have incentives. If you go and donate blood, you get money. And in the UK, that was not the case. So people had no incentive to donate blood other than that they want to profit from the system that they might rely on. If you have an accident, you go to hospital, you might need it. And they were looking at the quality of blood and the supply of it, and they were seeing that more people in the UK proportionally were donating blood and higher quality than in the United States. And something that is probably one of the most famous examples, probably BitTorrent, is going since the 2000s and predates the blockchain ecosystem by far. And BitTorrent is a file sharing transfer protocol service, peer-to-peer, and it has no incentive. It has literally no incentive. So what people are doing basically is they're sharing their bandwidth with other people to maximize their file downloading speed. And what they're doing basically is, if someone is not giving me bandwidth, if I peer with someone and they're not giving me the bandwidth that I am giving them, you can see in BitTorrent, these people drop these other people, basically the bad people who want to just extract and not give back. So you have already selection naturally going on by these people in BitTorrent. And you could observe that people, when they received good bandwidth from others, they were willing to give more bandwidth than necessary. This is not possible, this behavior, to observe with incentives, where it's much more calculated. So there are natural incentives that we want to exploit, essentially, and they're very, very important. Look at them. So we have natural alignment. All of us users, if we consider all of us here users, let's say of blockchain technology, we want low friction, we want a system that works, we want high reliability, we want a system that solves our problem, okay, either for a business use case or store value, anything in between. We want decentralization, and to be honest, be your own bank. If this is the selling point, be your own bank, then we are already seeing alignment here. We're all on the same page. So we have proof of association. This is how the XRP Ledger works, and it takes a totally different route. It does not have any incentives for validators. The validators, they vote on a set of valid transactions, and we just want transactions that are basically ordered, but we don't care really which set of transactions. So if I have a set of transactions and I order them in a particular way, and you're gonna pick some other order of transactions in another way, it's totally fine which way. We can just basically arbitrarily pick, because we don't care which way we go. The most important part is just that we have an order of transactions. That's all we need, just an order of transactions. Whoever picks that, we really don't care, because there's no competition. There's no dictator of the moment, because we vote on these sets. So I'm not a block producer. The whole XRP Ledger is. No double spend problem on the XRP Ledger. You cannot double spend on the XRPL. The nodes know all the rules, and the nodes, they select the people who are behaving in a good way and select them out who are not behaving in a good way. So the good actors accumulate, and the bad actors are getting moved out. Because essentially is, we only care about the good actors. Like if someone is not a good actor, they try to constantly manipulate a game and basically cause the system to halt, then that is not a good actor, and we just select them out. But at the same time, this is the only worst possible that someone has to think of on the XRP Ledger is halting. And that's not too bad. Like there's no other exploit. The only worst thing is halting. And that is not bad in all the scenarios. Like you could do double spend, order transactions in a MEV way. And the only thing we are concerned is, hey, if it's going to hold, okay, and if it's going to hold, I'm just going to remove that person and listen to other folks and continue forward progress. Natural versus artificial incentives. So artificial incentives they're centralized. They tax the natural stakeholders because these incentives are coming somewhere that have to be bought by some other people other than the people who are receiving it. They bring artificial stakeholders. They have no interest in the actual system. They just want to be here for the rewards. They don't really care if this system goes down. It doesn't bring the desired behavior because they operate at minimal cost. They just want to maximize their profit, minimize their cost. So they're not going to buy the most fancy hardware, the most good and reliable one. They're just going to buy what is good enough. And the punishment discourage honest participants. If you think of staking, proof of stake, and you have a high value, that is a problem. Going with a proof of stake way where people have to be afraid that they might get slashing and then they lose funds. Sometimes not even of the fault of their own. Natural incentives, on the other hand, they're decentralized because there is no reward, there is no competition, and there's no artificial stakeholders. The only people who are there is because they need the system for their purpose, whatever that might be, but they need it. And studies show that this is totally enough. Look at BitTorrent, look at other ecosystems. This is good enough usually to operate. And we have the XRP Ledger going for 10 years, works fine. So what is the conclusion here? Is the best incentive no incentive? The incentives are not a secret sauce. So when we look at all the incentives out there, they are not what makes blockchain a success or not. That is very important to understand. And people need a reason to use a system. Okay? If they don't have a need to use a system, then that makes no sense. On the other hand, cash-based systems, they bring incentives or discourage incentives that are otherwise not observed. Think of the blood donors, think of BitTorrent, where people were sharing automatically. You don't have to tell them to drop bad peers, they do it automatically. And the utility of the system has to be actually in the system, not the auxiliary rewards. Like if I participate in a system just because of the rewards, then that is a bad system and it is a bad design. Yeah, among all the incentives, maybe the best incentive is no incentives if we order them, and is the way to go with how we structure not only society, not how we structure governance, but how we have literally structured the XRP ledger. And it's one of the very core philosophies of the XRPL, and it hasn't changed so far. Thank you. I want to leave some time for some questions. We have a little bit of time, so if there are people who have questions, then feel free.
Please.
Jump in.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, Vedi, you mentioned the example of the Israeli daycare centers.
Yes.
It's actually rather famous. It's from the book Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. I remember it very well, and it's not quite the way that you described it. It's actually even better, because there was a before and an after. The before was that they had no sort of charges, and people were being late to pick up their kids. Then they said, well, we won't put up with this. We'll put a charge in it.
Yep.
And even more people were late picking up their kids, because then they thought, oh, there's a charge, I'm paying for it. Well, okay, I'll pay for it, and therefore I'm paying to get the right to pick up my kid late, right? So that's an interesting parallel with the blood example that you did with the US versus the UK blood banks. US, you get paid for it. UK, you don't. US has poorer quality and less amount in the UK. How can that be?
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you, in the US, it's the junkies and the desperate people that go and give their blood to get the money for it, and therefore no surprise that the blood is often of lower quality.
Yes.
Whereas it's in the UK, it's your sort of your civic duty. Well, there are times when there's a flood of blood, to coin a phrase, in the UK, when they can hardly handle the people coming in.
Yeah.
That's when there's been a massacre or a natural disaster, and people are thinking, oh, I want to help these people out. I feel so bad for them. They go and contribute blood, of good quality blood. And so, I mean, all of this, including the corrected Kahneman Israeli example, goes to your point about how, well, the whole point about what your lecture is all about, and I wanted to mention that. Look it up, Thinking Fast or Slow, Daniel Kahneman. Sorry, I don't know the exact page number, but you can look it up in the index. It's very famous.
Thank you very much. I would also add that, specifically with the blood donors, if there are more questions, feel free just to raise your hand, you get the mic. with the blood donors, people want, because they want to rely also on the system. If I'm donating blood, then that is not only altruism. Like people think this is just basically altruism. That is not the case. People actually have benefit of that. So if I'm a blood donor and I'm donating, it's because I want also to profit from that system in case I need it. Yeah. So it's also selfish in that case. Yeah. Please.
Hi, Thomas
Hi.
from FIO. So, yeah, I concur with you that in XRP, this consensus model works really well with no incentives. But that also leads into the criticism of lack of decentralization, because, of course, if you were truly more decentralized and the UNL was 100 times bigger, how do you think that would play out?
It is interesting. So the question is basically, if we have incentives, do we decentralize more or not? So the first thing is, if you have more people, the amount of people participating are the true amount of people who draw a benefit of the system. You don't have like a ghost chain where you have like 10,000 nodes, but nobody's using it. On the other hand, these people on other chains, where let's say you have 10,000 nodes, sometimes the same operators, or they centralize on where's the lower cost because they want to maximize their benefit. On the XRP ledger, I can pick a place where I'm living or where I want it to be because I want to decentralize the network because I have the benefit of it if it does. Because if the system is not decentralized, it might fail at me. And remember, I'm a natural stakeholder. I draw benefit from the system that it exists, so I want it to be reliable and robust. Other than when people have incentives, they might concentrate, and that leads to less reliability, but they don't care because they get incentives. Oh, Daniel.
I can hold my mic, thank you. So I slightly disagree with the fact that there's no incentive for participant on the XRPL, because if you're a validator and you're on the UNL, then you are incentivized to contribute in the governance. You're getting to vote for amendments, participate to a broader conversation on where to steer the ledger. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, so that is correct. Your incentive is not cash-based. It's not cash-based. It's about voting and amendment and all of this. The thing is, though, even with the UNL, any node on the XRP, every validator can vote. And it just happens to be that some people are on the UNL because of other people are listening to them. But every validator is drawing that same benefit, that they can vote and that they can decide with governance. It's just a matter of the system is taking their vote to the actual result of it. But I totally agree, the incentive is definitely not cash-based. It is to participate. And you only participate if you care. Yeah, time for one more. Daniel, we have there, so I definitely want to get that in.
Thanks. Great talk. So I just want to follow up real quick, and you took technically most of my questions. So isn't it correct that the sentence, which is no incentive is the best incentive, is a bit misleading and it's taken out of context because we're talking about money.
Right, cash-based.
So technically, for every action you do in life, there is an incentive.
Yeah.
If you stop breathing, you die. So the incentive is you have to breathe.
Right.
So no incentive is a lie. Because you're running infrastructure, core infrastructure.
Yeah.
Why are you doing it?
Why I'm participating?
Yeah, why?
I'm participating because I want the network to decentralize and to be operational. And that is only possible because I want it to exist for my own reasons. For example, I develop tools, I have a company, and maybe the token and everything that holders, everyone should participate in that sense because they draw a benefit from the system. And I do, therefore I'm participating.
So there's an incentive.
Of course. Yeah, the best incentive is no incentive goes definitely for all the incentives that are in blockchain, which are usually cash-based. So the best incentive is no incentive, not cash-based, is correct, yeah. Thank you very much.